Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Anissa Avon, and this is Leading in a Crisis Virtual Summit, Actionable Business and HR Strategies for Navigating Crisis and Change. And today I'm very honored to have with us Paula Harvey. Hello, Paula.
Hey, hi, Anissa.
So glad you're here. Thank you. Today's topic is HR crisis management, corralling chaos with intention from a 30-year HR VP. And we have so much to cover, and this was the exact topic that I felt like our summit was really missing. You know, the real in the trenches, HR crisis management, what's working, what's not, what did you learn, what do you wish you had known previously, those kind of things. So to get us started, I'm just going to say hello to our sponsors and say thank you to our sponsors, and then we're going to dive on in. So to begin with, I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. David Whitmarsh and his team of marketing consultants are just highly capable and competent at multi-channel marketing strategies. If your marketing plan has had to pivot, new products, new services, completely redesigning your customer base, reach out to David and his team. I know that they can give you a hand. I also want to say thank you to Insperity, HR that makes a difference. Insperity said, absolutely, will help as soon as I asked. And then I went back and boldly said, well, what do you think about giving something away for free? And they thought about it and came back with a free HR financial analysis report in debrief. And during my conversation, figuring out, well, what does that mean exactly? What I realized was it's actually a high value freebie in that it'll take our business performance advisor over there somewhere between 3+ hours of working with your budget and comparing it to organizations and what they're doing and similar stages of growth. And of course, given our crisis, we know HR budgets have gone right out the window in many cases. So don't hesitate to reach out to them. They know that not everyone that takes advantage of this is a good fit for their services, and they are still open to supporting your organization. So you can learn more at turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report. And our last sponsor is actually our internal team of strategists. We have this really awesome data-driven strategic planning process that is truly extraordinary in a normal situation. Well, our internal team of strategic planning consultants put together a crisis strategy, similar in nature, data-driven. It's all about assessing, creating an action plan, and then aligning the team. So if you and your team are looking at what are we going to do, not just now, but around the corner, give me a call. I'd love to hear more. A little bit about me. My name is Anissa Avon, and I am the CEO and founder of TurnKey Coaching and Development Solutions. And we provide a single source solution for enterprise learning and development. We have coaches and master trainers and OD consultants in every major metropolitan area in the US and in key hubs globally. But what I am most excited about is the incredible outpouring of support when I reached out to folks like Paula to say, I'm doing this leading in a crisis summit, and we're going to have a lot of business owners and HR professionals on the webinars, and I just want to serve. What can we share so that we can collaborate and grow and maybe navigate this crisis together? And that brings me to Paula. So Paula and I connected just because Paula is the kind of person who will reach out to people. She is a networker. She looks to help others. All you have to do is look at the initials past her name to also know that she is passionate about learning. She has an insatiable desire and thirst, I should say, for learning and growing. And so she's worked in, actually, let me start with, she's the vice president right now of human resources and safety at Schulte Building Systems, a metal buildings manufacturer actually right around the corner from me in Hockley, Texas. She brings more than 30 years experience as an HR generalist and an HR leader in the retail services, construction, manufacturing industries. She has also previously owned her own HR and safety consulting firm for several years. One of the other things that you'll learn as we move forward is that she uses her real-time experience to speak at HR conferences, SHRM conferences, and many, many, many organizations. She is internationally known as an expert in HR. She is the co-author of 3 books specifically around HR and different elements. And I hope, Paula, you'll tell us a little bit about those in a moment. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and say thank you for being with us. And what are we going to learn today?
Okay, so yeah, I was really excited when you asked me to do that. So let me load mine up. Oops, I don't seem to be able to load my screen.
All right, let's try that again. So I am gonna, there it is.
There we go. All right. And we will go to the thing. Hopefully it will slideshow. Come on.
Cooperate.
There we go. Awesome. Okay, so as you said, I've been in HR just a few years. So I'm not 30 years old. I'm way older than that. In fact, I have a big birthday coming up soon. So I wanted to first start out. I have been teaching and talking about crisis management because it's been a huge part of my career and my life is to deal with the safety side and the HR side. I've worked in manufacturing a good portion of my career. So one of the things that I felt was just very passionate about was teaching people CPR and first aid. And so I have been a Red Cross volunteer since 1995. And with the Red Cross, I helped, I tell everybody I train everything that doesn't involve wearing a swimsuit. Even though I could, I just don't want to anymore. And so I have taught professional responders and firemen and all sorts of things because of my passion in teaching and training and the passion for teaching people life-saving skills. And in that, then when September 11th rolled around, I got immediately thrown to the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina, to set up a place to house everybody, temporary housing, quickly get everyone set up, shelter in place there at the airport. Then had to move them to a high school, and I'd had zero training on how to do that except for teaching all these classes. And so I had to pull out the rule books, learn, and then after that I took all the classes to become a disaster preparedness person with American Red Cross. So I have been, I run shelters. I ran shelters during Hurricane Katrina for them. I especially like to run the shelters for the American Red Cross workers. I tend to do the graveyard shift. And then try to work during the day, and I'm kind of a zombie for a few weeks, but that's how it is because it's my way to give back. And my husband's very involved with it too. He does all the IT technology things, so it's a couple's fun way to give back. Oh. So that kind of started it. It then moved into Katrina. During Katrina, I literally was running huge shelters in Charlotte, North Carolina for several weeks, and just took off. I had my own consulting business at the time, so I just didn't work and decided to take care of people. So I wanted to start out with, because I've given lots of presentations on this topic, and I have a little quote that I feel like is such a fitting thing, and it comes from the late French novelist and Nobel Peace Prize winner, Albert Camus. And he said in his book, In the Plague, "Everybody knows that pestilences have a way of reoccurring in the world, yet somehow we find it hard to believe in ones that crash down on our heads from a clear blue sky." And I really feel that is what has happened. I have looked, I've just said to myself in the last, and I'm calling it 16 weeks. Somebody was telling me 10, 11. So I don't know where you started, but I've been on this for 16 weeks, to be honest.
Wow.
I said, this has been super, super stressful.
Yeah.
It's the hardest I've probably worked in 30 years, or maybe it's just at this time in my life, it just feels that way.
Yeah.
We have all sorts of types of stressors. We have the job stress. Some of us have jobs. Some of us have been furloughed. My son was furloughed. Some of us are having to learn how to have what we call transition to remote work stress and how to work from home, especially if you've never done it before. We have the financial stress. You know, we may have the stress of our own personal finances if they've been affected by this. Maybe you're working, but maybe your spouse or someone else in your family isn't working. And maybe, you know, you're having trouble with unemployment and getting unemployment even to go through. Maybe you, or like my husband, he got quarantined for 2 weeks, couldn't work. So that, you know, that meant he wasn't earning anything because he's an independent contractor. You may have your own company stresses. I've been worried about, you know, company financials too, just as much as my own personal stuff, because, you know, we want our companies to survive this crazy time. Besides that, then some folks will also have the home stress of like having to homeschool children. I just can't even imagine. I, you know, have 9 grandchildren here in the Houston area, and all of them are having to deal, the parents are dealing with that. Plus some, you know, some of the, my stepchildren and their spouses are working. And so trying to make that work. And I have our HR manager at my company is a single mom of 3. So dealing with that and making sure that one of the most important thing to me was that everybody got paid. So,
Yeah.
and she takes care of the payroll.
Yeah.
So, and then you have the final stress that I think is a really big one is your safety stress. Just, am I safe? I don't feel like I have felt safe since September 11th of 2001.
Wow.
I mean, I think everyone probably can own up to that. That feeling of, you know, waking up every day. I mean, we see, you know, Columbine just had 25 years. You know, kids going to school, things like that. Now you're worried that you're going to catch some disease at work and, you know, could kill you. So there's a lot of stress going on with people. So that sounds really doom and gloom, but at the same time, it also, it's a challenge to find the bright side. And I'm definitely a glass half full person. So what I find interesting is that having, you know, done the research to give this presentation today, I have been talking about pandemic flu since 2005. And I didn't realize it until I pulled all my notes and said, oh my gosh, I wrote a paper on 5/11 of 2005 about this, because they called 2005 the year of the bird flu. And so I went through special training with the Red Cross because they were really concerned about the bird flu. Luckily, it never really became that bad in the United States. But this has, you know, been a time of doing those types of things.
Wow.
So in prepping for what I was going to talk about today, I thought, you know, we should always think about, you know, being prepared. I will say that's probably because of all my training and stuff, that's a big thing. I luckily work with an amazing group of guys that is their thing too. So being prepared was really important. We have a crisis management plan in place. We have, you know, we started thinking about things. And like I said, we've been working on this 16 weeks. The first week of February, I went on a wonderful vacation with my daughter to Hawaii. So our Hawaiian vacation. And while we were there, I started hearing things about, you know, they were using hand sanitizers there in Hawaii. And there's a lot of Chinese immigrants that come back and forth there. So I thought, that's interesting, what's going on? And so I started reading, started hearing things, came back, started talking to my, the executive vice president who I report to. And by the, about the 3rd week of February, we started putting plans in place, making sure we were, you know, thinking about this. Are we getting ready? By the last week of February, we really had already had meetings with our group. And then by the 1st week of March, we were rolling stuff out. Wow. And letting people know things. So I really feel like we got way ahead of the game. And so, you know, it's important that you get prepared. You know what's going to work, what's not going to, and what you need to be ready to do, and which I'm going to talk about here in a second. And then we got to talk about ourselves as human resources. And I'm going to tell about my little story with it because, you know, I was feeling sad for myself and realized there's a whole bunch of us feeling sad for ourselves. And then I'm going to talk about what I think for the future of work, what is going to be priorities for HR leadership.
Excellent.
So I always, you know, think that got milk thing years ago. Well, I think it's now got hand sanitizer.
Got hand sanitizer? Mm-hmm.
And I'm really kind of proud of something. Back in that February time, we were talking about it, you know, with the bosses and stuff like that. And we were saying, you know, we're maybe you're going to need to get some more hand sanitizer. I called up our broker and I said to him, you know, I'm thinking we may need some hand sanitizer. I know that I go to all these conferences and they're always giving these little handouts of hand sanitizers and things like that. Do you think you could get us any? So she called up Blue Cross Blue Shield and got me over 700 bottles of these little hand sanitizers like you see on the screen with the carabiner in them.
Brilliant.
And I had them delivered the first week of March, way before anybody was doing this. Of course, everybody right immediately afterwards, it was you couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
we had to make our own.
Yeah, right. And so, you know, all our employees have this hooked to their belt and you can refill them.
So smart.
So, I mean, it's just, I don't know what possessed me to ask for that, but I'm sure glad I did. And I'm sure, and it probably came with other people's suggestions, but it's important. Another thing that I looked at really early on too was to talk about infectious diseases and to look at our infectious disease policy, and I updated that. And so I felt like that was a really important thing. So now I kind of want to look at the nuts and bolts of crisis management planning, because I think it's really important to know this. This actually comes from all my trainings that I did in the early 2000s, so 2005 to 2010, 11, I think I was giving presentations almost every year on this topic. So wow. A crisis management plan is really the full plan. That's what I think of it. I think of it as everything. It includes emergency response, business continuity, and pandemic. So it's making the plans and the preventions and being ready for something to happen. I have pretty extensive things done, have got a great safety group that works for me and with me and everything, or tells me what to do at times. And so they are, you know, we have put good plans together. And I've had this in any place I've worked in, and when I consulted and have my consulting business, I did a lot of these things. So having a good crisis management plan, I think, is extremely important, especially living here in Houston. We were ready for the tax day flood. We were ready for Hurricane Harvey. So, those things, because we had those things in order. Mm-hmm. Then you have to deal with emergency response. What happens during the crisis? That's where we're at right now. We're in emergency response. We're in the, you know, responding portion of dealing with something like this. And, you know, you're going to have your immediate things that you're going to do at first, and then, you know, things that'll roll out oh my gosh, I found out about this. And that's kind of the first things. Then you're going to have to continue your business going and try to find and I don't like saying a new normal. You have to find out what the now normal is. Yeah. Because I don't have any idea if it's going to be a new normal, if it's going to be an old normal, if it's going to be, and actually, to be honest, I don't think anything's going to be normal. Yeah. So I just think it's the now normal. And so you're going to have to figure out what you need to do to continue your business going. What's going to keep the wheels on the bus? Who's going to stay on the bus? And how are you going to go? And you have to have that framework for your organization looking for the future. And you have to be thinking the current, but you also are looking at what is this going to be the future. And you've got to really be gazing into that crystal ball and trying to figure out what that is. And it's very hazy right now. So figuring out what that will be going into the future. I mean, I read everything every day, every morning. I pull up my news and look at how many people have passed away and how many people are infected. And I look at what the economics are. I look at Houston. I look at, you know, Texas. I look at the United States, and, you know, I have I have family abroad too, so I look at the Netherlands all the time because that's where my sisters are. So it's important. What's interesting, like I said, this is from 2008. There's also pandemic planning. It's just making those preparations for a pandemic. And a lot of folks thought of the first three, but never thought about that fourth piece, which should all be part of that crisis management plan, because there's so many pieces that you can have in a crisis management plan. So in your plan, you should make sure you always have a good team. This is from the Red Cross and CDC stuff. And essentially, this is what you'll have: somebody who handles the crisis, that usually, or it could be a team. And that team will have the marketing, HR, business operations, finance, admin. That's who's on our team. We have, top execs in our company, and then other people that are high senior execs that are really important to make sure that we deal with the different functions and the different things that are needed inside of a team during a crisis. And also testing that plan to make sure it's going to work. So this is really the guidelines that I've been using for years, is that this must be a senior management driven, top-down plan. You have to have your team know who's going to be on the team, pull it together, and sometimes quickly. So it's better to know, ahead of time who might be there. You got to set the priorities. Is it keeping, the people safe? It should be. This is a long-term, not just a one-off, not like a hurricane that comes through, and that's, you deal with that and then the aftermath. But this is something we're constantly responding for weeks on end. And, we saw the unemployment numbers that came out today. So those are, we're up to like 39 million people without a job. So right now that just makes, that's long-term, which is, like I said, on the stressful side. You've got to also find out where your resources. One of the big things I found is that during this is being very resourceful, finding ways to find cleaning supplies, things like that has been really important. And then when you have a plan, you need to communicate. You need to make sure everybody has a copy of it. You need to make sure that you sit down and test the plan. Sometimes I find the tabletop studies just to walk through it, talk through it, and then update the plan as you need it. After the different, the tax day flood, which was actually worse to us than Hurricane Harvey was, we had, we made some changes. In fact, one of the biggest things was to add this special texting program that we can text our employees. Mm-hmm. And I've also done a lot of work on our email systems, and we changed our human capital management system last year, which has really made things so much better for this year. So getting to what's working, what's not during this current pandemic situation. And I think that's really important to think about what has been working for me, what's been working for others. The early issues that I really thought that was important was, first thing, we had to kind of cancel employee travel very quickly, because that, we don't want people running around everywhere. Then we immediately got those posters ready and started, putting up things from the CDC, Health and Human Services, all of those, hand washing, we, got, the hand sanitizers, the soap. We made sure we had 6 feet social distancing, explaining what social distancing, because I actually like to call it even more, I'd rather call it physical distancing, because it's more than just, being socially away. You want to be physically 6 feet from each other.
Yes.
And we had to make sure that our time clocks were where you touch a screen. We didn't want anybody touching the same place, so we immediately changed how people clocked in, so that the supervisors clocked in their employees. We, like I said, updated policies like the infectious disease, but we also had to create a temporary work from home policy. And that was, something we hadn't done before, which has ended up being, we went around, and the IT went around just to find out who had computers at home and could do this. And so that ended up being a big success. They did a great job with that. We also had to talk about, we see that business is going to be a little bit less. So do we need to cut hours? Do we have pay freezes, hiring freeze, things like that have to be discussed within organizations. And in some cases, and not my company, but other my HR friends have had to make really critical decisions on who do they lay off, who do they furlough, those things, who, you know, what type of people will be working, and then how do you pay these people? And then they're having to deal, my company's bigger than 500 employees, so FFCRA didn't apply, but if you were under 500, you had to really look into that FFCRA Act and go through it. And then also the CARES Act, you know, organizations decided if they wanted to take a PPP loan or not. And there was lots of little pieces. And if you were, you know, had to give people time off with pay, not with pay, you know, there's just so many little legal pieces that have been really, really important to keep up to date on. We, you know, had to think about, you know, the fact that FFCRA didn't apply to us, but what do we do about the people that have to be out because of a COVID related issue? Like maybe somebody tested positive in their family and we're concerned about them being around them. So, you know, we had to create a special pay just for folks to be paid. We wanted to keep people whole to at least 40 hours. So, and then we did childcare for 2 weeks so people could get, if they just really couldn't find anything else. And we took care of a couple employees that, you know, had to take care of their children until other things could be set up. So we did, you know, some special things there, and companies have to really think about it. I read a lot of things on my Facebook feeds and things like that from other HR people who were having to make those difficult decisions on how to keep people whole and keep people, you know, wanting to stay and work for your organization. You also have to, in some cases, you know, I think the big cities and things had to think about transportation. You know, you don't want, if people go by metro or bus or something there, you know, you don't want to do that. And a lot of those closed down even. So that has been issues for some companies, just getting their employees to work. Then the daycare situation, as I mentioned already, is that, you know, how, you know, if all the kids are at home, not going to school, and the daycares have closed, who's taking care of the little ones? And so we have some husband-wife teams working at our place that they've had to do some switch offs, and it's worked out well. We've been able to accommodate them. So I think some of that has been things for companies to look at. One of the big things that I immediately realized is that, hey, we don't want people going to doctor's offices. This is too scary, et cetera. So called our broker and said, we had a $40 copay to do telemedicine. And I said, it needs to be zero. And it was funny that week after I made this phone call to demand this, and they given me a hard time on it, Blue Cross Blue Shield came out and made it zero copay for all of their fully insured, and then an optional for self-insured, which we are. So I said, oh yeah, that's what I said I wanted in the first place, you know. Done. Mm-hmm. You just got to do it. And I have been talking, in fact, I talked yesterday with them saying, well, they said, well, after this, we'll go back to the $40. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think this is a good thing. I think people really enjoy. I had my annual physical over the internet, by the way, because my doctor said, don't want to, I had already done all my I was in the midst, it was right at the time. I'd been to done all my labs, and I'd done everything. So all I need to do was go in for my physical, which was scheduled in March. I told her, I really don't want to go in. I'm in charge of 25 employees. Yes. No, I said, so she called me up. I gave her all my stats because I know the medical stuff. So I gave her your weight, height, my blood pressure. I had a blood pressure cuff there. I took my temperature, gave her every single thing. And I said, the only thing you can't do is look at my ears, but I'll tell you they're fine. And so we were good, and we renewed my blood pressure medicine. So that was it. So, amazing. Yeah, so, I could actually say I've done that. My husband had to have one too recently over online. It was just so much easier to do that. So I think we're going to get creative with that. I think that the medical world is going to really change.
Absolutely.
So those were kind of the first issues. Then the second issues that immediately started not long after that would be things like all the different IT meeting software. I have now counted it up as of this morning. There are 11 different software types that I'm using for meetings. I could not believe it. On24 is something that Sherm uses. There's another one called Digitel. There's, of course, Zoom, like we're on. And I could give you a whole list. And it's amazing how many different softwares there are just to meet. Our company really moved to MS Teams, which has been great. And I found, and then my church has moved to Google Meet and Facebook Live for doing things. So then we started noticing we were running out of cleaning supplies. So all of us, there's about 4 or 5 of us on the exec kind of small group, and we were all hitting the Krogers and the HEBs and trying to figure out where we could get them. And so, yeah, I have got some interesting branded stuff, but we have been able to keep it going. And then we found a distillery that local here in Houston that was making hand sanitizer. So the more spray type. So we've got lots of gallons of that too. And then I've seen some price gouging on some of that piece. Luckily for us, our plant in Alabama had the company next door to them decided to retool and start making face masks immediately. So we bought face masks from them, and we also bought enough for that small town. We bought like 3,500 to give it out to the police, the fire, the nursing homes and things like that to help in that small town there. So we've given out a lot of masks. I actually had somebody come in my office a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, the Katy firemen are only giving these paper masks and they got to use it for weeks on end. I'm like, what? And I saw handing them out. Here, more cloth masks. Just give them to any fire, police officers you want to give them to. So, hopefully, we're allowing people to get good things,
Paula, I want to mention, that is one of the reasons why, and correct me if I'm not remembering this correctly, you won, or you were awarded the North Carolina SHRM Humanitarian of the Year. And you're modeling this in all of these actions. You've shared with us multiple examples of giving back, modeling the way, showing caring, empathetic leadership beyond what's in it for us.
Right. Well, that's why I work at a place that believes in that. Yeah, that I mean that they are amazing. So I think it's important working at a place that believes in doing the right things, and it makes life so much easier. So when you're able to do that, and it's just the support of others, but everybody at that's just how we are. That's our culture.
Love it.
Yeah. And so, we also had to look into getting a cleanup company just in case, because we, had a company down the road, the big one, that had some people test positive, and we heard about that, and they had to get a whole cleanup crew and shut the place down. And we said, let's just be prepared for that. So we got, we know how much it costs, and we know the company, and we're ready to do that if that's needed. So thinking those things ahead. I've talked about a lot of compliance issues, just staying on the laws. Everybody in the team just is always asking questions. And I think sharing and communicating and saying, hey, did you hear this? And I think that's really helpful. One of the bigger things is our Alabama plants had got a lot of employees getting scared. Just, and so dealing with that and explaining how we've done a good job. I think communication is such a key piece. That HR is the communication hub for our company. And so they bring me the information and I make sure it gets out to the employees. And it's really important to be a good communicator and that communication hub. Because people are scared. I mean, I remember I sent something out on the 401k early on because we also had that crazy kind of crash there at the beginning of March-ish or end of February. And so people were, wanting to pull the 401ks out. I'm like, this is not the time. No. You buy low, sell high. Don't do the opposite.
Not the other way.
Exactly. So just sending that information and making sure, and we have a great, our administrator for our 401k that gave us information to get out to the employees. So just being sure to get good communication so people can make good choices. And then also explaining, and we told employees, you're not, if you're too scared to come to work, we're going to tell you it's safe. It's fine. It's fine if you want to stay home. We're not going to let you, terminate you because of that, but we really want you to come back. And, within a few weeks, everybody was back. So we had a few of the ones that were the most scared. So that if you just treat them humanely, explain the situation, and do all the right things, it should help you out.
Yeah.
So this is the pandemic flu outbreak kind of checklist that is from 2008. And so, or actually 2005, that was most updated was 8. So, reviewing your plan, making sure you know how do you deal with your multiple locations, making sure people, if they're sick, stay home, that you explain personal hygiene, you explain, doing the right things and wearing masks and gloves and stuff if you need to, modifying that workplace to keep the social distance and flexible scheduling as much as you possibly can, but you got to keep still the work going. And then also, part of the pandemic is that this affects the whole community. I just was amazed how many people are at the food bank at the outlet mall, and it's just broke my heart to see them in line past, my turnoff here off Mason Road, just going farther and farther. And it's just, and so quickly into it. So, doing things to give back and help others, I think is important. So I thought this was so funny because when I was putting it together, I said, oh my gosh, I have the actual CDC poster from 2008 where they were teaching people how to cover their cough and do all that. And it's, it's not changed any. It's just that we need to be following this and doing these things. And there's some great posters out there, but I thought that was just interesting and fun. So HR's role in all of this is that we should be helping with the planning. This is, we should be part of that, C-suite team and team to be an advisor. You need to know what the plan is. You need to stick to it. You need to give advice on the plan if you think there should be changes. You should be looking at policies and procedures, etc. You should deal with the staffing. That's one of the biggest things. I've been keeping, tabs on the staffing. And, I had all 3 of our plants telling me when people were missing and what we were missing for. And I was keeping tabs on, who's ill, what they're ill for, why the reasons out. And it was just really, and I kept a great spreadsheets of this because it was important to do that. And then you've got to, keep those essential operations. A lot of that, it was our operations group doing it, but making sure, and then everybody on the team, we had regular meetings. It's all on the phone now or WebEx or whatever. MS Teams, but and just talking about what's going on. And we normally would only meet every couple of weeks on stuff like this. Now it's weekly or more. At first it was at more. Now it's a little less because we kind of seem to be in a groove. Then you've got to make sure on the training side, which HR often is very involved in, is your health, your safety. How do you use proper PPE? I try not to be the face mask police, but I still, it's like, hey, I send out little emails, remind you, we're still in the face mask order, guys. So, and then you may also in HR have to be involved with the media or liaison between management employees, and you've got to be the person with the level head and, be careful not to, just immediately move on something without doing good due diligence and asking questions. And, but they also want you to be sincere. They want you to be caring. There's been a time when I've had to shed a tear or two. Luckily, we've had nobody really affected with COVID at our workplace, and no one positive now. And so it's been, it's been important, that just being that person. And I think part of it is by constantly telling people, be careful. Just because the state's opening up and a lot of other places are opening up doesn't mean that this has gone away. This just means that, we're trying to get some semblance of work going in the country, but at the same time, we all still need to be careful because there's no cure at this point in time. So you had asked me to talk about, how do we stay sane? I'll tell you, I think the first, about 2 months or so, I probably was not being the best on myself because I kept saying, I just need to get there. I need to be there. And I let my staff, work from home. And I realized finally that I needed some work from home. So it's probably been, this is either my 5th or 6th week now that I have Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons at home. And that has been the best thing ever. I needed to take some me time to work from home. I work more actually, and I'm actually more productive. But I've had this home office because I teach for Rice part time. But I was thinking I just needed to be there. And there's a point where they're okay, they're fine, and they can reach me by the cell phone, they can reach me other ways. And so I just needed to take some me time to make sure that it's okay. And I also have been doing it, but I got better about it now in the last weeks, is to make sure I'm talking to my other friends, because realizing that they're all going through the same stuff, it makes it feel a little bit better. I have been on some happy hours with SHRM friends and various conferencey things and virtual hangouts. And I am a member of the #HR Social Hour, which is run by my friends John and Wendy, and they get together on it's like every other Sunday at about 6 o'clock, and they just talk about fun things. And the first question is always, what's in your glass? And then after that, it's an hour-long just chat about different topics in HR. There are some really amazing groups out there. There's also, in general, there's a group of us that just go by #HR community. There's, of course, the SHRM folks, and there's a Next Chat group. But there's also, for folks who go to the annual conference, or even if you are just wanting to go to the annual conference, because of course it's been canceled for this year, the Facebook annual conference group, there is a whole bunch of people that are sharing everything in the world. It's been great. And then on the SHRM website for HR professionals, there is some wonderful information. They've got a whole dedicated area just for dealing with COVID-19. But my advice is just remember, we're one human. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to, do things, but just, learn from them, reach out to others, and don't let yourself be on an island by yourself. I really, I think this has given me more perspective in being a better member of my team, even not, just reaching out to the others and making sure they're okay too. So I think it's been really important to do that. And I've actually gotten, I think, I feel even stronger in my job, to be honest, at my company through all of this, by going through this.
Wow.
So lessons learned, I would say, be ready to write and revise policies and be flexible and stuff like that. Just that resourcefulness, that was so important, is looking, hand sanitizer. I found on Amazon paper masks 2 days ago. They came, I had them delivered to my home, because if I had them delivered at work, it takes longer to get shipped. So I had them the next day, and I have 200 masks that, because it's so hot outside, even though we'd gotten those great cloth masks from the company that had made them for us, they're just so warm, and it's so hot here in Houston that I found the paper masks that breathe a little better. So just being resourceful, and I got someone else in the company to also buy another 200. So we have that. I've had to learn how to be a purchasing manager a little bit.
Exactly.
And find cleaning supplies and stuff. But I think it's made my work fun, And then there's a million webinars, a million meetings. Everybody in the world, because they're also sitting at home and a little bored, seem to have something new. I've had to become really choosy, because I don't have enough time for all of that.
Yes.
And so I'm picking ones that really pertain to what I need to do. And, I will not need research credit for my certifications for a while, because
that's right.
But make sure you have your exposure plans, and you know what you're going to do if someone's quarantined, if you've got isolation orders, if your company has to shut down, all of those things. And then, employees will freak out, and everyone will be dealing this. So good communication. I've had some folks tell me that they never heard anything from their management team. Yeah. And I'm like, that's horrible. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, it's just like you just expect them to be out there and not know what's going on. I think it's so important. You've got to remember that the number one thing should be the safety and health of the employees and of yourself. So going into the future and priorities for HR, I kind of looked at, what do I think we need to be able to do in the future of work for HR? Well, you want to be somebody that people trust. Your word has to be golden. And sometimes the word is, I'm sorry, I can't talk about this right now. I'm sorry, I cannot discuss this with you. And just being honest about that. You also need to know what's going on, not just in your department, but what's going on for your company, what's going on for your locality, your local, state, federal, what's going on sometimes in your employees' lives. I try to be careful about too much of that, but at the same time, you want to be a caring person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's balancing that. You also need to not want to always have the answer for everything. You need to be able to find the answer. I mean, I like to be, kind of a jack of all trades. I don't necessarily always need to be an expert of everything. And so I find it better to say, I don't know that answer, but let me go look it up and get you the exact right answer. And make sure you follow up and do it, because that's one of the worst things that can happen to HR is that they don't follow up and people say, well, I went there and I never heard anything.
Lose trust. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's going to be talent issues going on. We just came out of 3.5% unemployment. So it was like if a person didn't have a job, they didn't want a job, and you were stealing them from everybody. And now I have the flip going on, is that everybody wants the job and they're all applying. And especially right now they're receiving their unemployment, but if that starts running out or less, we're going to see them knocking on the doors.
Yes.
So, and dealing with furloughed people, are you going to bring them back? Because the idea with the furlough was that they would stay on your payroll, and come back when you open your business back up. So are you bringing them back, and how are you bringing them back, and what are you bringing them back to?
Yes.
And so that's really important. And how, I've had very little turnover. I mean, and it's funny because we started out the year with a kind of bit of turnover in one of our plants because they just have, it's hard to find employees up there in Alabama, this more rural area. So, but now very little turnover. But with the ones that we do, how am I going to source and hire the best people?
Yeah.
That's a key piece too. You want to get the right people in. Also, I was reading a paper from a friend of mine, and she had said, these are the skills in the future of work. And it was an interesting skills that you're going to need for looking to be in HR. And number one was communication. You've got to have good communication skills. Well, that's what we ask for, even for college graduates, to have is good communication skills. And it's the one thing we complain about they don't have. The next one is you have to have good collaboration skills, that you can collaborate with others, not just HR, but other departments and other things, and that you can put yourself in their shoes, which leads you to the next skill that I think is really important, is emotional intelligence skills. Mm-hmm. Because emotional intelligence means that you can be empathetic, you can understand how someone else feels, you understand your own feelings, but you can also understand how you're perceived and how others are perceived. And that's really important to have some of those emotional intelligence skills, at least understanding in your skill set. You also need to have, be financially savvy. I think it's really, really important to understand how money is made in your organization or how money is lost. I know one of the things that, we have been told to do is just to be careful with costs. Like you said, budgets have been cut. But also, I look for things, if we don't need to spend it, we don't do it.
Yes.
And I treat it like it's my own business because, I've owned my own business. And so I have come from a different kind of perspective of that, thinking if I treat it like it's my own business, which I consider it to be, even though I'm working there and I treat it as if it's my own, then I'm going to be careful. Just like you're careful with how you spend your paycheck, you should be careful with how you spend the company's money too. Yes. Because that will, help the company to have money to be able to do other things and for the employees into the future.
On that note, just very side note, but it is something that I see HR professionals who are looking to have greater influence, that seat at the table, where they have influence, not just a seat. Yes. And that is one of the gaps that some of our HR coaches will coach HR leaders specifically to understanding, is that those priorities inside HR must coincide with the financial priorities, if they're going to be seen as getting the business of the business.
Right. I call it alignment.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You've got to be able to align the HR priorities to the company priorities, because if you don't, you're not doing it right. And then the final thing that I would say is a priority for HR is you got to be flexible. I think this is just going to be fluid time. And this is just to be where people have to understand to be flexible is so key to being successful.
Yeah.
And realizing that, like I said, this is the now normal, and we'll see what the now normal is
Tomorrow.
from now,
Right.
a day from now, and because it can change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So understanding that can change so often is really, really important. So my final thoughts on this then is I received from a friend of mine who she runs a group called she's called the HR Bartender. Her name is Charlene Lowry, and she's out of Florida. She's amazing. She's really in the talent space especially. She runs her own businesses, but she's worked for some big name organizations over the years. And she has got this new project. It's called the Unretirement Project, because she realizes that she may never really truly retire. Kind of feel like that would probably be my plan.
Yes.
But she says for people who are seeking jobs, there are 7 skills you need to have. And she says, 1, you better be able to work with goals, have goal management. 2, you've got to have good organization skills and be able to organize things. 3, you better be able to make good prioritization of things that need to be done in the way that an organization wants it to be done. 4, you better learn how to network and work with others and make sure that you build that right network around yourself to be successful. 5, I love this one, you need to be curious. Yeah. You need to be innovative. Think of different ways to do things and not be afraid to speak up about it. 6, you need to understand risk. I think as an HR person, it's really, I consider myself a risk mitigator. That's really one of the big things that I do for my organization is I mitigate risk. Try to, lessen it or keep from doing it and let them know that part of it's, compliance with laws and stuff like that. But part of it's just best practice and doing the right things. And then the 7th thing that she said is those communication skills, make sure that you understand, what is needed to communicate to others and when to communicate, how to communicate, and many different ways to communicate. So, it's important to plan. Unfortunately, you plan for the worst usually, but like I said, I'm glass half empty. So I hope for the best, but it is important to make sure that you test your plans, revise them. And, time will heal this. And what happens, I look at, I did all that training for, especially after Katrina I would go and set up disaster toolkits in companies. And, after 6 months, nobody was interested in it anymore. 6 months later, because people forget about the 9/11s, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, and now COVID-19. Because they move on to things and then all of a sudden realize, oh my gosh, yeah, I need to be thinking about this. So don't, be planning, have those things ready. And, I'm hoping that these were some interesting ideas from someone who's been doing stuff a really long time.
Really, really interesting. And I have just a couple of questions, and folks that have joined us, please type your questions in the chat box. We have just a few minutes. But if you have a couple of minutes, Paula, I want to ask you a few.
Sure.
Okay. So one of the things that you mentioned several times was communication, right?
Yeah.
How do you measure the success of how much communication is the right amount? How did you structure that plan? And what kind of feedback were you looking for from your employees to know, ooh, that's the right formula?
I think that is really, really good because I am very sensitive to this. One thing I learned a long time ago is that make sure what you do is impactful. So if I was communicating every day, no one would read it. Yeah. So now I usually send out, whenever I feel like it, on Friday, I tend to send out a communication every week. I've sent out more when there's some other things that have happened, but there's usually some type of thing. So they call it the Paula Friday email that they're looking for. So they read it, I get lots of feedback from it. People come and say thank you. I'll tell you, I've never been so appreciated in my career as I feel like I am recently. It's been really nice. But also, I've made sure that that's not the only thing. So I also believe in putting, I go old school and I put up signs on the bathroom doors. I have a whole thing on the big 5 of what you're supposed to do on all the bathroom door. It's on the bathroom stall doors. It's on the door going into the restroom. So, yeah, I just felt like those are the right things. We have bulletin boards and, it's a variety of things, but I'm not a huge believer in too much.
Yeah.
I feel like, and most of my emails are not very long, to be honest. I think of a lot of people read them on a cell phone.
Yeah.
So you do not want something that is, 50 paragraphs long. If mine's past 4, that's probably, I'm really getting too wordy. I'm a bullet girl. So I think it needs to be something that somebody can read pretty quickly, but will be like, aha, and I appreciate that. And then if it has more stuff, you might say attached is, a flyer on your 401k or whatever it is. So, but I also make sure the subject line is making sure that it says exactly what it's about.
Okay.
I think that's really key. People are not good about it's descriptive, but not too much. And definitely don't put the full body of the message in the subject line.
Right.
I've seen that too. I'm like, what? So, and it doesn't get read. So you want to make sure that it's something that someone will read. And I also get feedback. I have people, proof my stuff because I'm a great editor, but sometimes you miss your own mistakes.
Yep.
So I'll get stuff proofed and looked it over, and I especially now with everything that's been going with my couple of our executives, I tend to let them look at things. I also, I speak fluent Spanish, so I translate all my stuff to Spanish too. That has been very helpful and really appreciated. So, I think that's been important to do.
So what I heard was, you're looking for feedback. You're looking for, is my message getting across? You're also looking to be super concise whenever you can.
Yes.
While I'm trying to color between the lines of what you said, while also making sure that you're empathetic and it's not so dry that it comes off as indifferent or, this is the policy or that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I say some funny things in there because I think humor helps.
Yeah. Levity is important.
Yeah.
We all need a lesson in levity sometimes.
Right. Not silly.
Yes, not silly.
There's a difference.
Yes, agreed. My other question, and then gosh, the time just flew by, but you had mentioned there's going to be employees that freak out.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's your go-to management style that works both with HR, direct with employees, and or helping your people managers who have to manage it as well?
So some of them that I have, when you have as many employees as we have, I don't know everybody perfectly, but some of them, especially ones that have been around a while, I can pick up the phone and call, and of course always shocked that they're like, oh, she's on the phone with me. But I believe that their direct manager needs to talk to them. Yeah. I also have, an HR safety person in Alabama. So he's done a lot. That's really where our biggest issue was. And yeah, I was like, you get on the phone, you call them, tell me what they say. And if you want me to get on the phone, I will too. And so, because he has that rapport with them, and I think that's really, really important. So and just talking them through it. And I found once they know that you care, and you are scared too, because I've said that. I've even said those words. I said, you know what? I totally understand where you're coming from, because to be honest, I'm scared too. Mm-hmm. But I'm just not going to let them beat me, and I'm not going to let this disease beat me. So I'm going to take all the precautions, do all the right things, but I want to keep on earning a living so that I can keep helping people out.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So we have just a couple of real quick questions. Bettina has two questions. How can I be a part of the HR groups? Are those something that other HR professionals can join?
The hashtags, you just go on Twitter, just have a Twitter handle and start chiming in with everybody. It's such a welcoming group of people. So once
Brilliant.
they see you, say hi or say Paula Harvey, you'll find me. Mine's at Paula, the number 4 Harvey. That's my handle. So, you just get on there and start tweeting with us, and you'll find friends.
In the relationship.
Oh yeah, and I have one of my best friends is up in Canada, and we met about 3 years ago on there, and she is just my sister from another mister, and it's just that's been really cool.
That's so cool.
I've created these friendships all over the world. I have friends now, and I can't wait to go visit in Australia when we are allowed to travel again. That I've just gotten from this. This has been so meaningful to me. These friendships across borders from just talking on social media. And we're not talking. I don't spend hours and hours on this. Just here and there.
Bite-sized sound bites.
Right. Exactly. And then the Facebook thing is just really helpful. You just look for it. If you're on Facebook, then you just look for that group and just say, I think, you can find me, of course, and then, but you just find the SHRM
local
annual conference. I think it's called annual conference group.
Okay.
And then they're usually easy to find, most of these things. So.
And then you mentioned your friend who gave us some good advice, the something bartender.
Oh, the HR bartender.
I thought it was HR bartender. Okay.
Yeah, so she's on Twitter. she's on everything. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Paula, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your just your expertise and your teaching skills with us. And I just bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. Thanks for asking me.
My pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Do reach out to Paula and let us know how we can support you as well. And stay safe and healthy. Stay safe and healthy, Paula.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.